Welcome to The Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman here with my co-host, Chris, the guy who's just so ready for Ignite, and hey, here we are, McNulty.
Stop reminding me. No, it's really great to be able to share news here at Ignite. There's so many people who are attending live and who are connected online. And I love that we can use the Intrazone to help reach out to even more people because we have great news about organizations that are looking to transform their cloud content and get it all into the goodness of Microsoft 365.
Yeah, originally we have always had this offering we call Fast Track that really helps people onboard into the cloud and then focuses on use and adoption of that technology, all of it, not just SharePoint and OneDrive. Our team certainly then focused on the SharePoint migration tool to do what it is that we expect our closest customers to do.
Or as we love to call it, it's such a heartwarming name, SPMT.
SPTMT, yes. Sounds like we dropped something. But that tool has been growing, so it now supports SharePoint Server 2010, 2013, and file servers, so really getting from on-premises into the cloud. But recently, and the exciting part about this episode is we announced the acquisition of Mover. And Mover is a company that's bringing both great technology and people who specialize in migrating content. Think of it as, a cloud to cloud, getting from other third-party cloud storage into Microsoft 365. And for you and I, Chris, and of course the world, that's primarily SharePoint and OneDrive. And their focus is that this can be both admin-led for some complex cloud to cloud or self-service.
I remember 10 years ago running SharePoint projects. This is even prior to my time at Quest. And we would purchase partner software to move things into SharePoint on-premises from other places. But that was all on-prem through on-prem software to this. And it's probably could have seen it, but didn't see it, that someday all this would be cloud. Start in the cloud, move with a cloud-based tool, an entire pure cloud transformation solution. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. Something orbital?
Well, with quantum computing, it'll be just in the small molecules that will all exist. But, really, if hopefully at the end of this episode, people will see from Microsoft helping you get into the cloud, the Microsoft 365 services, and of course, where you put your content. From a files perspective, certainly with a lot of tools coming together, our goal is to help our customers move there with confidence. So collectively with Mover, today we offer support of cloud file migrations. This includes Fast Track that I mentioned. They do, obviously, the tooling and the people, and offerings from our third-party ecosystems for when there's complexity or just different sources that we don't yet support, or also just that planning. You also always want to have a good service or consultant in planning migrations. But it all works alongside that SharePoint migration tool for when people have content on premises that they want to move to the cloud. So our goal is to offer as the easiest possible route to get into the cloud with the tools and the people that you need.
I just think of this as the front door, because if you think of Office 365, of Microsoft 365 as a storefront, there needs to be a way for people to reach you. There is a point in every organization's evolution where they have zero content in our service, and we have to provide a way for them to get started. We also have to pair that. We several weeks ago had our Content Services Summit for our partners here on campus. And we have tons of great partners delivering software and solutions for transformation. And there's always going to be complex needs where people are moving off of complex legacy systems, or they need to integrate data from third-party sources into the migration. All of those complex transformations, that's always been a part of this ecosystem, always will be.
I think it's the thing that less and less over time, fortunately, has become the perspective blocker when people are thinking about using more and more different workloads in the cloud. They think about, well, we've got a lot of content. We don't want to abandon it or have it orphaned in a way. And I think we did things like hybrid search that started to bridge those gaps where, yes, if you're not going to move content or there isn't the easy way to get the content into the cloud, you can connect it and have at least a decent experience for finding the content. But we know from how we have used it, how we see our customers respond when more and more of the content is into the cloud, there's a lot more things that they can then do with it. Co-authoring is the simple one that comes to mind. But then the higher end offerings really that are in your camp of being able to protect, manage, report, audit, put things in the right place with the right metadata, that all comes to life with this new offering and all these capabilities. But if the content isn't in the cloud, then, there is that blocker of, well, we can't move just yet or until X or Y is in place. And some of that is it's hard for us to get in.
So let's get started. I'm really looking forward to sitting down with Hani and Eric in just a few minutes.
Yeah, Hani is our program manager on the migrations of everything, all things that we do with SharePoint, OneDrive, getting migrations into Microsoft 365. And Eric is actually one of the co-owners of Mover, who is now a Microsoft employee. And now we turn to actually talking to Hani and Eric. Hani Loza is a program manager here at Microsoft, and Eric Warnke is co-founder and CEO of Mover. Eric and Hani, welcome to the IntroZone.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Eric, can you share with the audience what company you used to work for? And I say that recognizing that now we can officially say that you are happily a Microsoft employee.
Absolutely. So I co-founded a company called Mover. We're based in Edmonton, Alberta, and our focus over the recent years was doing data migration into Office 365.
Well, it's nice to have you on the IntroZone, and of course, it's nice to have you within the Microsoft fold as a peer employee. Hani, can you share a little bit about who you are, what drives you here at Microsoft, and some of the things that fall under your reign of expertise?
Sure. Again, my name is Hani Loza. I'm a principal PM manager in the SharePoint and OneDrive team. I lead the program management team that is focused on migration, basically all the migration engineering investments, whether those are the migration APIs that are leveraged across all our partners, as well as our first-party engineering investments in first-party tools like the SharePoint migration tools. Our goal for our team is to provide options and solutions for our customers to make their migration to the cloud easy. Couple of fun facts about me. Just been in Microsoft for more than 24 years.
24?
Yes.
Yikes.
And
you almost got the big crystal casing.
Almost.
Nice.
And I've been in SharePoint since day one. Little fun facts.
So you knew Jeff Teeper when he was just Mr. Teeper. Now he's Captain Teeper.
Absolutely. I actually started working with Jeff Teeper before SharePoint on Site Server, if some of you still remember that product.
Absolutely. I've been working with, going back into the 90s, Site Server and Commerce Server and Tahoe and CMS. And you've seen them all come. You've seen them all go.
These names bring great memories.
Yes. Eric, I kind of want to ask you how you got into the migration business. I've been working, Hani and I are chatting about this here. I've been in the ecosystem prior to joining Microsoft for a long time. And if we roll back 10 years, there was a lot of activity in the migration space, with Exceller and AvePoint and a number of other companies that were out there. And then for a while, the ecosystem kind of hit a plateau. And sometime in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a real resurgence across the board in the ecosystem with some of our, intranet partners and with our migration partners. So what was it like for you that got you into the business of migration up there in Edmonton?
Yeah, that's a great question. 10 years ago, I didn't even know what SharePoint was, to be frank. And we started Mover with the intent to create a backup product. We had lots of websites that we wanted to preserve, and we were not trustworthy of ourselves to keep that data. So we were looking for some cloud provider to back up into. At the time, things like SkyDrive were just barely getting started, and we started by offering a web app. From day one, it was a cloud-hosted web application that anyone could use, and we played the field a lot with all these different providers. We were friends with the Googles and the Dropboxes of the world and the Microsofts. And over time, what our customers ended up doing is, I like to say they dragged us kicking and screaming into the migration space because that's where a lot of the problems in the ecosystem are today. There's lots of backup companies out there. Companies like Microsoft do excellent jobs actually backing up that data. And we realized that was where the hard problems were. And they were really interesting.
So let me just ask, because it sounds like you were looking for I want to understand this. You were looking for a backup solution, or you wanted to create a backup solution?
Oh, yeah. So we sought to create a backup solution.
Okay.
Because everything that I could find out there that could back up like a website from an FTP server required me to run my own laptop or desktop and run some software to do it. and we wanted a cloud-based solution. And so we built that and realized that after a lot of mistakes and a lot of tests and changing directions, that migrations were where it was at.
It's funny. I remember back in early 2012 demoing a SharePoint online migration utility. And at the time, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Now I'm like, how cool is it? It was running on a laptop? Why would you do it on a laptop?
Well, Eric, I will also say, just hearing how you said you got dragged into it, we always talk about customer advocacy, which really drives a lot of what Microsoft does for customers. We talk about user voice. We talk about things that are data-driven, but by actual use. I love this visual of your past being customer dragged into the future. But really, for me, it resonates like that's you turned on a dime because you were being pointed in a direction that customers were requesting or yelling for the need for, which is really great to hear. Hani, just from the lens of now with Mover inside the fold of what we offer to our customers, what does that look like next to the SharePoint migration tool and next to some of the other things that we're offering with the API and the migration manager?
Absolutely. So that's an awesome question, Mark. Very similar to Eric's story, we see that as the customers demand more to help them migrate to the cloud, our approach was to provide them solutions and options that make their journey to the cloud much easier. And that's where we kind of started working on the SharePoint migration tool as well as the APIs, the migration APIs that help our partners build great tools to help the customers. But specifically, we started about 2 years ago investing in first-party migration tools to address core scenarios for our customers. And once we launched the SharePoint migration tool, we found it's great adoption from our customers. We've got to a point where more than 7,000 customers use the SharePoint migration tool to migrate their content from SharePoint on-premises and on-prem file shares to SharePoint and OneDrive. And over the past couple of years, more than 16 petabytes of content were migrated. That's huge.
Whoa.
We were very proud of the impact that this tool is having on the customers. So with this success, we also hear from our customers demanding additional solutions for other third-party cloud providers. And we've been working with the Mover team for a couple of years now, either through the fast-track migration benefits or directly from customer engagements. And it was very clear that the Mover team has fantastic people talent with great customer focus and great solutions and technology that is proven with large and small customers. So with the addition of Mover, customers have a broader set of migration solutions to migrate from different cloud providers, as well as with the SharePoint migration tool, focusing on the on-prem scenarios.
I kind of want to double-click on something you just said there, Hani, because we've seen for a long time, whether I'm doing simple content movement or I'm doing content transformation, one of the things that you suggested there is that you need a lot more than just a great software solution to execute that. You mentioned some of the other things that are ingredients in that success.
Absolutely. So again, the people talent is definitely there, and the being customer obsessed, really listening to the customer. Migration is a very broad problem, and customers have different specific needs. And kind of listening to those customer needs, prioritizing the work that we offer to our customers to meet the core scenarios to help them migrate to the cloud easier.
So through the lens of the customer, not just their voice, but let's actually get into maybe a pause on the tech and talk about how customers are migrating and what it is that they're actually accomplishing. So, Eric, I'd love to start with you, whether you can name a specific customer or just generalize their scenario. If you can just share one particular story that helps understand what did they try to accomplish and then, of course, how they went and did it.
I absolutely love talking about our customers. This one I helped with, but it was mostly my amazing team that took care of it from start to finish. So it's Autodesk. They're a big Microsoft partner, and they even were kind enough to help us do a testimonial video, which everyone can see on our website. The key differentiator with them and the reason they were successful is that they were extremely, extremely organized. They had a team of people preparing the whole org for their migration. They incentivized people with rewards for early adoption of O365. They had planning and training sessions, and it was just an absolute pleasure to work with them. And they also relied on us. Instead of trying to do absolutely everything themselves, we were able to work hand in hand and accomplish an amazing migration.
I bet that particular migration might have had the most influx of CAD files than any other customer.
I believe so. They moved tens of millions of files. And one of the most interesting stats that I like to tout from that is I think we had it was like a 5.9 success rate. It was like less than 100 files had issues at the end of the day, and it was a very successful migration.
That's great. Well, I have seen the Autodesk video that you all put out. We'll make sure to put a link in the show notes so that people can see that video and hear more from Autodesk themselves. Hani, any particular customer or broader different scenario that you have in mind that you want to share?
I've got two that comes to mind. First is a pharmaceutical company. They use the SharePoint migration tool to migrate their home drives to OneDrive. And they had a lot of content. They had more than 500 terabytes of content across 110,000 users or so. And they made a bet on the SharePoint migration tool, and they used the tool to self-migrate themselves to the cloud. And it was a great partnership. We partnered very closely with this company and with their IT department. And they were able to complete their migration job on time. And it was a true partnership. They were in close contact. They raised issues, concerns, feedback, and that was critical for us to actually guide the additional investment we made in the tool. So that was great, and we actually met the customer face-to-face once the project was done. It was great to see the impact that the tool had on their productivity or transforming their productivity to the cloud. The second is an IT customer. They've been a SharePoint customer for a long time, so they had a lot of on-prem investments, and they're planning to migrate to the cloud. For that customer, they used the SharePoint migration assessment tool. As you can imagine, on-prem, it grows without a lot of governance, so it's hard to understand what you have on-prem. So they leveraged the assessment tool to understand what they have on-prem. They came up with a great plan, and it was great to meet the customer in the last SharePoint conference. And they walked us through how they came up with the migration plan and how this data helped them drive into decisions and actually started implementing the migration. So again, hearing these success stories and the customer impact is awesome.
I want to kind of turn away from the customer, though, and talk a little bit about the solution. Eric, we've been, even prior to the acquisition, we at Microsoft, we hope, are familiar with how Mover works. What's the technology behind the scenes? What can customers expect? We've been working with you all going back through Fast Track and before. But our audience may not be as familiar. So could you help educate them about what Mover is technically, how it works?
Yes. The Mover web app, Mover is a web app, and it has been since the very beginning. We were never fans of having to rely on local hardware to accomplish a migration in the cloud. So when our focus was initially bringing one cloud to another, we said, what better place than to run it on a global scale? So anyone can open up their web browser. It works on your phone even, and you can self-serve a migration of virtually any size from one cloud provider to another. If you need more help, we have a team here too that can help, or Fast Track is also amazing partners that help get migrations done using our tool. And the key takeaway is that it is a self-service administrator tool.
It's interesting, and you mentioned a couple other things, Hani. I'd love to have you expand a little bit, kind of with our vision. How do we see Mover fitting into that range of solutions? Some of them are partner-led. We have SharePoint migration tools. We have, my favorite migration technique, which is cut and paste. But obviously there's a spectrum of solutions. And how do you see Mover fitting into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you mentioned, content can be anywhere. And our goal is to provide the customers different solutions or easy solutions for them to get to the cloud. If your content is on your desktop, you can just use the OneDrive sync and the known folder move to move your content straight to OneDrive without, changing your activities or anything like that. It'll keep saving it to your desktop and My Documents. And if you're from on-prem and you need a tool that has access to your on-prem environment, that's where the SharePoint migration tool comes in. Mover comes in with, as Eric mentioned, a cloud-based solution that is awesome in moving content from cloud to cloud. And they have a great set of connectors to those third-party storage providers to connect to these providers and move content to Microsoft 365. So with that is we've got kind of a comprehensive set of tools that the customer can use themselves. In addition, as Eric mentioned as well, the Fast Track team offers onboarding and migration benefits for a customer who needs a little bit more hand-holding than just a simple self-serve tool. So a Fast Track team leveraged Mover for the cloud migration solutions from Box and Google Drive, and they leveraged SharePoint migration tool for their file share migration benefit. So customers have the option to use our self-serve tool or Fast Track at no additional cost. But we know that migration come in all kind of shapes and form, and maybe customers have specific needs. And that's where we have a great ecosystem of partners that can specialize in all these different scenarios. Customers can leverage those partners to complete their migration project. So broad set of capabilities for the customers to come to the cloud.
I also want to emphasize, with the announcements that Satya made in the keynote with our new offering around content and knowledge, we think there's just even more benefits to having your content be in the cloud, to be able to build your knowledge network in Microsoft 365. And we just think there's going to be even more demand to get content from wherever it happens to be into our cloud.
Absolutely. We listen to our customers. That definitely comes up, as well as security and compliance. And we're building a lot of capabilities and features to address those customer needs.
So, Eric, the big question then falls on your shoulders. How do Microsoft customers get Mover today? And maybe between you and Hani, any insights into the future as you ramp up now post-acquisition?
So, as I think was just announced by Jeff, Mover is actually available for free to all Microsoft 365 customers. Initially, we've reduced the scope to North America, but we are hoping to ramp up really quickly over the coming months and enable it worldwide.
What does that look like, as the portfolio grows and the team grows? A lot more migration scenarios, anything you can tell us about the future or what was also said here at Ignite that we can include?
Absolutely. So if you think about the customer journey in migrating their content to the cloud, the migration part, actually moving the bits to the cloud, is just one part of it. But there's a lot more that happens before the migration, and there's more that happens after the migration. So there's a lot of problems that we still need to solve there. So I'm very excited having the Mover team join that mission, and then there's more that we can do together. Specifically with the Mover team, we're very early, as you can imagine, in the integration plans. So top of mind for me is make sure that we can integrate both solutions and have a unified experience, migration experience to our customers from Office 365. So that would be kind of the top part, and then there's more that we need to do down the road. As we materialize our planning and our integration plans, definitely would love to share that with our customers.
It is time for an IntraZone favorite, the unplanned sports question. Something we always try to sneak in because I realize...
I think this is going to be a hockey one, maybe.
It is, because I realized the initial rollout was roughly congruent to the scope of the NHL. And growing up as a New York Islanders fan, Eric, I have to ask, Oilers?
The Oilers are the hockey team in my city, yes. I suffer from a case of being a fair weather fan of most sports. I played basketball for 10 years and was never too focused on hockey. So I'm a bad Canadian.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not a huge sports fan, at least not necessarily when you compare me to Chris on this particular show. However, I do know that as you migrate, possibly yourself and your mind and your team into this area, we have some exciting news. We don't know yet to what to call them, but there will be a new NHL property and team here in Seattle. Chris, do you know any of the names they're throwing around?
The two contenders, and they haven't finalized it yet. One is to call them the Seattle Mets or Metropolitans, because in 1916, the Seattle Metropolitans won the Stanley Cup. So we've won a Stanley Cup here in Seattle before this new team's even started. The other name I happen to like for lots of reasons is it's a tip of the hat to some of the local aquatic life, to salmon, and also a play on what most fans think about with hockey and call the team the Seattle Sockeyes in honor of both the salmon and what sometimes breaks out on the ice.
Oh, I like that. Well, I've also heard rumors of Seattle Orcas and Seattle Evergreens. So, Eric, the question back to you. If the Oilers maybe didn't get your blood boiling in a good way too much, what about the potential for the Mets, the Evergreens, the Orcas, or the Sockeyes?
I think the Sockeyes is a pretty fun name.
Yeah.
There's a lot you could do with a logo there.
All right. So I think as the Sockeyes maybe migrate upstream, we'll make sure to put that plug in.
Sports futures notwithstanding, we should also talk about the future of our solutions for our customers. I'd love to get some thoughts from both of you about now that Mover is part of the Microsoft family, how do we evolve this moving forward? And what are some of the investment areas that are top of mind for you about ways to continue extending these solutions?
As I mentioned, there's a lot of problems that we need to solve to help customers move to the cloud. Definitely top of mind what we hear from our customers is how to make it simply to manage large migrations. Also, how to even discover the content that needs to be migrated from their source. And we're going to put a lot of investments and figure that problem out. And again, having a common solution, common platform that we can use to connect to all the different endpoints that we support is definitely something that we're going to be investing in.
And Eric, if you put your lens on how does Mover, the product, blend and integrate, I know generally what those plans are. How would you think about those as phases of expectation for admins? If they're going to go there today, maybe in 6 to 12 months, and then thereafter?
Yeah, so just to get something out there, I'm not an engineer. I'm a product guy. I mean, you would never pay me to program, although some people might have made the mistake. When I look at Mover or any web app, I think a lot about user experience and making sure that the person using the tool has the best time possible. Because if they're rage clicking or frustrated, it's not good for anyone downstream that they have to manage. And I think that the future that I envision for Mover as part of Office 365 has a couple different levels. There's some really quick wins that I'm hoping we can get where individual users can maybe help themselves. But also in the future, it would be really nice if nobody had to leave Office 365 in order to accomplish a really streamlined and simple migration. And that's for any scale. I want our partners to be able to use that tool as part of what their customers offer or have with Office 365. And then I want some of those more administrator-focused customers to also be able to have a great experience, all baked in without a separate app that you have to go to migrate.
Eric, I love your vision about where you would like to take it, and I'm also seeing Hani here in the studio nodding his head. He's also smiling. So it sounds like a great offering, and again, back to the customer-driven, not customer-dragged, but that future sounds like one that they're going to eat up and really benefit from when they need it, not just one time. It's just whenever they need it. So, Hani, you actually have a session that's just in a couple of days. If people are listening to this right now, we're at Ignite. You're going to be delivering a session about all of this. Can you give us a synopsis of what that session is going to deliver?
Sure. The session is actually on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. It's about how to migrate to Microsoft 365 free and easy. And we're going to cover the new investments in the SharePoint migration tool in order to help our customers move from on-premises to the cloud. We're going to talk about new features to help reduce the complexity of large-scale migrations. And finally, talk about the integration with Mover to help customers migrate from third-party cloud providers to Microsoft 365. Exciting session.
Very exciting. So if you hear this and you still have time, it's before Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Definitely check out that session. Know that it will be made on demand. And if you're going to catch this on demand, just look for the code BRK3006. Good luck on your session.
Thank you.
So it's been great learning more about Mover, and it was definitely insightful for me, but I'm sure there are more things that our audience might want to learn from each of you, and whether it's related to migration or even other topics. So Eric, if our audience wants to get more information, how can they find you online or elsewhere?
For sure. So this week, if you happen to be at Ignite, we actually have a full Mover booth. It's number 601, which I think is just near the main entrance. If you're not at Ignite or if sometime in the future you want to just reach out to us, you can find us on the normal social media platforms like Twitter. I think we're mover_IO. And then, of course, our website has all the contact info, which is mover.io. And our support team is absolutely amazing, and we have live chat, and you can contact support and get all the information you need there.
Hani?
I'm here at Ignite this week. I'll be in the booth for migration, admin, and server. So feel free to stop by. And also reach me on LinkedIn, Hani Loza.
Excellent. Thank you both.
You know, Mark, once upon a time, when Microsoft held conferences, one of the things that everyone would do there is collect swag. You would collect white papers and books and T-shirts and stickers and all these sorts of things. But over time, we've really broadened the reach of an event like Ignite, so people can engage online. They can engage with us in things like the podcast, where we're sharing Ignite news today. But I'm really excited that we can now bring all of that swag goodness here to listeners of the Intrazone.
Now, I had a little trouble hearing you, Chris, because I had my pretend virtual Surface earbuds in my ear.
But funny you mentioned that, because if you're enjoying this podcast, as recorded at Ignite 2019 here in Orlando, our organizers are giving you, yes, you, a chance to win one of 10 Surface earbuds. I think 10 pairs of Surface earbuds, because winning one earbud might not be what you want. But one of 10 Surface earbuds just for listening to this recording, featuring an ultra-comfortable design, intuitive touch and voice controls, screen-free access to Office 365, immersive sound for music and calls, and all-day battery.
All day.
The new Surface earbuds help you stay on top of your day. To be in the chance to win, visit aka.ms/msignite/podcast sweepstakes and complete your details.
To enter, you must be 18 years of age or older. If Microsoft Surface earbuds are not certified for distribution in your legal country of residence, you will be provided with an alternate prize of equal or greater value. I hope greater. For full terms and conditions, visit aka.ms/msignite/podcast sweepstakes. Entries close at 11:59 p.m., no later Pacific time, on December 15th, 2019.
Oh, no one's going to give me them for my birthday then. My birthday is 2 days before.
I think you're going to have to enter the sweepstakes, Chris.
Next on the Intrazone, frequently asked questions. Our guests and Mark and myself hear lots of questions from our listeners, and now is the time to share the answers to those. So, Mark, what's a frequently asked question you've been hearing lately?
So I get a lot of questions around, can I do this or that into or out of SharePoint in Microsoft 365? And sometimes, similar to the migration questions, it's just a more generic question. Can I connect to information or get to it, when it's information or data that's residing beyond the Microsoft 365 container? And so I thought, I at least give the answer that I give, but I usually take a broader stance to answer both from a developer's perspective, not being a developer, but knowing enough, and then just getting into the generic, how do you work with data that's outside of Microsoft 365? So we have a lot of connectors. And if you think about Microsoft Teams, you can bring information from lots of places inside of Microsoft 365 or from outside from third-party offerings. We have, of course, a lot of APIs that we make publicly available so people can build custom solutions like our migration API. And we've got custom solutions that people can build using SharePoint Framework, so they can build their own applications that, of course, can then reach out to data outside the walls. And finally is something like Power Automate, where you can build a flow to get data from outside the service and bring it in and incorporate it into an actual workflow. So there's a lot of ways to get to data outside of Microsoft 365. So it's a resounding yes. That was my long FAQ. It's a great answer, I think, just from a technology perspective. Chris, what's your FAQ this week?
So the answer to my FAQ is no. And the question, as you know, is 15 gigabytes the largest file size that we support in Microsoft 365 today?
15 is such a small number.
It is, but it is much bigger than that. Do you think it's 30? Do you think it's 50?
No.
It's a much bigger and rounder number. It is 100 gigabytes. In SharePoint and OneDrive libraries, we now support 100 gigabyte file size, something we announced in October, and we're really happy to share that news here on the Intrazone.
And Hani, we'll give it to you to answer. Does that apply to migration as well, bringing in big 100 gig files?
So today we support the 15 GB file size, and we're working in order to add support for the 100 GB file size.
Awesome.
So
And
coming to you soon.
I love it. And to just ground it even more, I know from the sync team that they will be also supporting them in the future. So certainly syncing files up to 100 gigs. Awesome.
Hani, what is your frequently asked question?
My top question is, does the SharePoint migration tool support tenant-to-tenant migration? The answer is no, but now, with Mover, they support that scenario.
Fantastic.
So the question might be, does Microsoft support tenant-to-tenant? And now with the acquisition, it is a
Yes.
excellent.
Eric, I'm sure with the acquisition there have been lots of questions that have been asked of you frequently, but what's one you'd like to share with our audience?
The first question is, what connectors do we support going into Microsoft 365? And from a source perspective, we support traditional file servers like FTP servers, SFTP, WebDAV, local file systems, and also some cloud offerings like Amazon S3, any sort of open Swift operations. We also support other competitors to Microsoft 365 like Box, Dropbox, Ignite, Google Drive, Amazon WorkDocs, and we're constantly evaluating and adding more. And the second question myself and my team get on a regular basis is, how do you handle files that might not be properly formatted for SharePoint or OneDrive? And the answer to that is Mover automatically handles all the changes that might be needed. If there's an invalid character, we strip that out. We can truncate file names. We can reformat things. And our motto as a company is no files are left behind. So we really want to make sure that as an administrator doing your migration, that you don't have to think about reformatting all your data just in order to accomplish the migration. We like to remove that headache from you, and you have to focus on who's going to migrate and how you're going to tell them that you're about to do the migration.
So, Hani, it looks like you may want to add a bonus FAQ for our listeners, if I'm reading that right.
Sure. So the second top question we usually get is, does the SharePoint migration tool support migration to OneDrive? And the answer is yes, even though it's called SharePoint Migration Tool, but it supports migration to OneDrive and Microsoft Teams. As you know, Microsoft Teams is backed with a SharePoint site, so we can migrate content to all Microsoft 365.
So getting content into Microsoft 365, if you combine what Eric shared as his FAQ, is we got the sources covered, we know the destinations, should be a done deal.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing those questions and answers. And folks, if you're listening to us and you're here at Ignite and there's a question you'd like to have answered, please find Mark or me somewhere out on the expo floor. And if you shared the question with us, we'll be sure to feature it in a future broadcast. So, Mark, it's time to update our audience with events going on. It seems like it's impossible to imagine ever going to another event after Microsoft Ignite, but it is possible.
It is possible. With Ignite, the big event, and now in our rearview mirror, we have Ignite the Tour. So if you are unable to attend Ignite in Orlando, now is your chance to reap all the benefits of Ignite that is now being brought to you in a city near you. It is the same technical training led by Microsoft experts and your personal community, a lot of MVPs. In the SharePoint-related tech space, keep a lookout for the content collaboration, communication, and engagement in the intelligent workspace learning path. So find the city nearest you. We'll include a link in the show notes, and you can follow all the action on Twitter with hashtag MSIgniteTheTour.
Another way to get connected with technical training, SharePoint Saturdays. They're an exceptional opportunity for users and for IT to learn from and engage with their local community. And despite their name, they cover the breadth of Office 365 and M365 content, information on Teams and Power Apps and more. Also, one of the best things about them is they're free. Free.
Oh, free.
But for you, half price. You can find lots of SharePoint Saturday events at spsevents.org. There are dozens happening around the world every year. A couple upcoming ones, November 16th, SPS Ahmedabad at Ganpat University City Office, SPS Leicester at the Leicester Racecourse in the UK, and SPS Twin Cities, one of the biggest ones, at Normandale Community College. All of those coming up on the 16th.
On November 23rd, there is SPS Lisbon at the Microsoft Portugal office. And then following week, on November 30th, there are 2, SPS Bangalore at the Microsoft office in Bangalore and SPS Munich at the Microsoft German headquarters. And on that one, we want to call out that there are some special guests from Microsoft: Dan Holm, Director of Product Marketing, and Omar Shaheen, Partner Director of Program Management, who will be providing the keynote there live, SPS Munich.
Crossing the Atlantic, coming up in early December in Prague, the Czech Republic, the European SharePoint Conference. This is a multi-day event that spans content beyond just SharePoint. Just like SharePoint Saturdays, we're covering Azure, we're covering Power Platform, and the breadth of Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. There'll be 5 keynotes with Jeff Teeper, Scott Hanselman, and more. 4 days of content, 150 great sessions at all levels, and a couple from me. You can learn more at SharePointEurope.com and, of course, on Twitter at EuropeanSP.
So as the end of the year comes, if between December 2nd and the 5th you didn't find yourself at the European SharePoint Conference because you weren't on that side of the water, December 9th through the 13th is SP Fest Chicago. The Microsoft keynote is being given by Naomi Moneypenny, our friend and Chris's close peer. She's the Director of Content Services and Insights. This is going to be scattered with tons of Microsoft and MVP speakers. It's a 3-day conference with 2 additional workshop days. That's basically 130 plus sessions, 25 workshops, and of course, networking galore. So if you're looking for an excuse to get to Chicago or you're in the area, visit SharePointFest.com/Chicago and follow the action on @SharePointFest if you're eating it all up on Twitter.
And that won't be the end. As we look into 2020, there'll be even more events coming up. So if you have an event that you'd like us to feature on the IntroZone, why not write to us and we'll help share the news.
Thank you to our guests, Hani Loza and Eric Warnke, both now with Microsoft.
Check out our show page to links of everything we discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theintrozone.
Send us your questions or feedback for the SharePoint engineering and product teams. You can email us at theintrozone@microsoft.com or on Twitter @SharePoint, @mcashman, and @cmcnulty2000.
Tell all your friends and colleagues about the show, SharePoint Love. Subscribe down at your local cloud migration store or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, write us a review. Even if you're not a regular reviewer of things, people, meals, and so forth, this is one time it really matters.
Yes, and we absolutely appreciate that. Thanks again for listening. We are your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. You've been listening to The IntroZone, a show about the migration into the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet.